Welcome to the Previously Rockhounding podcast, where we explore the world of rockhounding and lapidary from the ye olden days of the 1970s and 80s through the lens of vintage issues of Rock and Gem magazine.
This is episode 5. We're looking at Rock and Gem magazine from February 1976.
Well, before we get into this week's episode, in the previous episode, there was some questions about the state abbreviations being used, specifically Washington State and WN being used instead of WA. So I looked it up. The United States Coast Guard has their own state abbreviations, which sometimes differs from the United States Post Office. Okay. So the Coast Guard uses a WN abbreviation for Washington and not a WA. I don't know why.
Is it because they used to use WN and the Coast Guard just kept that?
I could not find a good reason.
Definitely in the ads, they're like, our address is like P.O. Box, this, something, WN. So
that's a good question. I was not able to find a legitimate source for the origins, but I just know that that is a thing. So we saw WN, like Sarah said, for the addresses, and that's what that was. It was not a typo. We just didn't know.
We're not old enough to remember or be alive then.
Also, we discussed what 1 carat was in other units of measurement. So 1 carat is equal to 0.2 grams, or an ounce is about 141 carats. So that was a thing that we...
It's good to know some carats were mentioned in at least one article as a reference. So.
I have to make a correction as well. I was ranting about the inaccuracy of modern day maps, and I believe I said that during the Lewis and Clark expedition, their maps were accurate within about a mile. That's not true. It was actually within about 40 miles. But still pretty good considering the time and...
Nobody had ever been here before.
Yeah. So
making their own maps.
And we received a question about how we prepare for this podcast. So I read the magazine and take notes. Sarah also reads the magazine and she takes notes. For this episode right now, I have 3 pages of typed notes and I wrote about 900 words. So that's the kind of preparation that...
Also, we don't talk about it until we're now. So we haven't rehearsed. I haven't looked at your notes. Do not mention anything about it. That's also part of the preparation. Yeah,
and Sarah handwrites hers, so she has no idea what her word count is.
I don't know. Probably less. I don't think this would be, page and a half, page and 2/3 handwritten.
What are we talking about this week?
The cover says we're going to learn, it says agates, field trips, how-tos, which I'm not sure it promised on that, but also specifically how to make a bicentennial pendant, facets of history, birthstones, amethyst, miniatures from Walker Valley, and gifts from your tumbler.
Before we get into some of those articles, let's talk about some ads. There was a couple of really interesting ads in here. First off, I'm always into all the different saws and different things that are in there. There was an ad from Spartan Manufacturing Company, and they had an ad selling a 20-inch slab saw for $595. And then when you make the adjustment for inflation, that would be $3,006.41 today, which that's a little much, even by today's standards. Like $3,000 for a 20-inch saw is certainly up there.
For your home use, that's a lot. But if you're like somebody selling slabs, like they're trying to get like shops or clubs, maybe they're advertising, not just to personal use machine.
I mean, I do know of some people that buy big machines, big saws, like a 20-inch saw, and then cut. You could go out and buy rough rock, and then cut that rough rock into slabs and sell those slabs and make enough money to pay for your big saw.
Yeah.
That's just a lot of time and a lot of...
Or people have a big saw and they charge other people to cut their rock on it.
Yeah. Yeah, big saws are good. I would love to have a bigger saw, but it does get complex both in space, the oil. People never talk about how much oil goes into these things. Some big saws take 30 gallons of oil, which that's, depending on where you want to get it, that's about $600 in oil in today's prices. That's a lot of money floating around in your saw.
Yeah, they were just like saw for sale. It wasn't like...
It was just that.
Some of the stuff, it'll be like investment, like buy this as an investment. So I could see if you're like giant saw, they could be like, this is an investment, like start your own rock cutting with this saw, but they didn't say that.
Eventually, when we time travel forward, we will probably see that they don't say anything about an investment.
Like invest in these gems.
Yeah.
I saw a few interesting ads. Some of them I didn't understand. There was one ad, I don't know if anyone would understand it. It was like Quinn Minerals, and they just had a list of the minerals and stuff they sell. And then it said, Rockhound rules on returns. And I was like, what could that possibly mean? Like, does that mean no returns? Does that mean like if you don't like it, you can return it? Like, what a vague statement. Like,
yeah.
Rockhound rules. I'm like, was there like a standard for returns back then?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought
it was weird.
Weird phrasing of it.
Yeah. I also noted some of the ads will be like, write for us for our catalog. And the catalogs really vary in price. Like $1. One of them, it was like a Taiwan jade. It was like full color catalog for $4.
Seems like I don't know if I would pay that today.
This magazine cost 75 cents.
Yeah.
So $4, like what? That's like $10 adjusted for inflation.
Yeah, that's an expensive catalog.
Yeah.
You really have to be into it.
And there was another one that said, send them $1 for their price list and you'll get a quartz crystal.
Oh.
Which makes sense. Like, why don't they do that? It's probably the teeny tiniest quartz crystal. But like, people are going to write for your catalog if you like send them a free crappy rock.
Yeah. There was an ad from a company called Maja. I don't, well, whatever. That's a weird name. They had an ad for a diamond flat lap disc that they called the satellite disc. And it pretty much, it's your standard flat lap disc for like the high-tech flat lap, right? Where it's like a metal electroplated or centered style disc with diamonds on it, except theirs had a contra-opposed orbit grooves. So, which that, I know it sounds very 70s, but the idea was to put, I guess, diamond-free grooves in your flat lap disc that would mimic the pattern of a satellite going around the planet. So, like, if you're to, like, take the orbit of a satellite going around Earth and then mimic that in your in your flat lap disc, for some reason they said it was
not like a normal circle. It's like a,
Up on the website there will be a photo. If you go to currentlyrockhounding.com/podcast for this episode, there's photos of all the stuff that we're going to be discussing in here. But hey, when you were a kid, you played with a spirograph.
Yeah.
Essentially, imagine that pattern that a spirograph would produce on the flat lap disc. And I thought it was like really, it's like such a 70s thing. It's such a space thing. I mean, the space race was happening. Like, every opportunity to make something space related was like a good marketing thing in the 70s.
I mean, I think for this, what we're going to see this year, and I saw a lot, the marketing opportunity is the bicentennial.
That's true.
That came up. So many ads were like, bicentennial special. There's even one for Australian imports, like Opal was having a bicentennial special deal. Like, they're not even in America. They don't care about bicentennial.
Bicentennial only comes around once.
What else did they? Yeah, that was it. Oh, there was like one that was said, "Salute to America. Make your own bicentennial puka choker." Like, I guess.
Again with the shells. Man, shells were really really popular.
Nothing
back
is
then.
more patriotic than a puka choker.
Well, there was an ad that you would definitely not see today. I would bet money on it. There was an ad selling snuff bottles. You could buy a snuff bottle in it, like carved out of jade or opal, agate, and whatever. And it's just we wouldn't be selling snuff bottles anymore.
There was an ad. There's two ads for the same deal, but they were on completely separate pages. One of them said 5 Arkansas minerals labeled in 2.5-inch boxes, $20. And I thought that was quite the gamble with $20, or just like 5 2.5-inch boxed minerals. The boxes, they're not saying the minerals 2.5 inches. It still seemed like a lot.
It seems a little scammy.
Yeah, but there was 2, and there was another one that was exactly the same, but it was 5 Mexican minerals instead of Arkansas minerals.
If you think about the time period, that seems like so easy to rip people off. Like,
yeah.
What, like they mail their money order to you and you cash it and you just like never send anything. Like,
or you send them 5 quartz crystals from Arkansas.
Yeah,
that's not worth $20 at all. Like, yeah, I thought that was I don't know, I guess if you're like, $20, who cares? Let's take a gamble. But like, you gotta have I'd assume you'd have low expectations. If it was anything good, they would tell you what it is.
Well, that's all I have for ads.
I noticed when looking through these for ads that aren't for like rocks or anything or equipment, almost like 100% of the ads are like rock or equipment or snuff bottles made out of rocks. There's one ad that wasn't, and it was for a safe, and it said "Protect your gems," which I don't know if that safe company has ever seen the collection of anyone into rocks. And I mean, gems may be a little different, but like, well, everybody's just got like buckets and buckets everywhere. Like, what kind of safe are you going to get for that? I guess you're like, these are the most special little bag of gems, and it goes in my safe.
I guess if you have like faceted,
yeah,
like expensive things and jewelry,
yeah,
right? Like you're making silver and gold jewelry, perhaps. But yeah, otherwise, what? Like you need like a vault door on a barn. Yeah, so many people have cabinets in their house, have buckets and bins, and
I don't know if that was the right market to sell a safe to. But also, I noticed most of the ads are text, just text. Some of them have some photos of equipment, but they had one ad that was a full photo, and it was for quick setting adhesive, and it had like a lady's face. You could see like her face and her hands, and she was gluing something with the adhesive. But that was very different than all the other ads. You don't see any people in it. I guess the ads for the metal detector had that guy who did metal detect, like the football player or something, but I don't know, I guess when I think of advertising, I think of like using a lady's face or body to like sell a thing is a common thing in advertising. I didn't see that except for this one ad so far, so I don't know if that's going to show up more or that was a one-off. It was very different from all the other ads, and all they were selling was adhesive, like a glue.
I don't know, do we even need ads for glue? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, there's so many glue options.
That's true.
That you're like, oh, a lady can do it. I guess I can, because I'm a lady, or like, I don't know what the point was.
Before that ad, women didn't know that they could use glue.
Probably. Yeah, that's it for ads, really.
Well, the columns for this issue started off with the glory hole, which is the editor's column. He mentioned some future trips going down to Baja, and the book, Rockhounding, Rock Collecting, and Rockhounding in Baja. And some of the challenges of researching the minerals and where to go in Baja. Mm-hmm. Well, I just so happened to have purchased this book about rockhounding down there in Baja. And we have
the book that they wrote.
The book that the editor of Rock and Gems magazine wrote. And it was originally for sale for $1.95. I picked this up on eBay for $2.95. And this is like a mint condition book. It's very cool. If you come over to the Saturday night special on the YouTube channel right after this post, so that will be episode 99 of the Saturday night special. I will be showing this, and it's very cool. Has a bunch of awesome vintage black and white photos from going down into Baja and going rockhounding.
Cool.
The editor's little book, because he talked about in this column getting it together. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was kind of fun that I was able to go out and track down his book today and buy it
for barely more than, I mean, probably less than inflation.
Yeah, it did not appreciate much in value. But then, that's, I buy a lot of used books. I scour my sources.
I liked in the glory hole column at the end, he's talking about they have a craftsman of the month. Every month they have it's like a half a page or one page. And he was like, if you can't take a clear photo of your item, don't bother sending in your pictures. You're wasting stamps. Like, come on, people, take a clear picture. We need a close-up. It's the craftsman. We want to see your craft. We want to see it. Take a picture that's not blurry. Take a picture with good lighting. Otherwise, we'll never pick you because your pictures are bad. And I thought that was interesting.
The blurry photos are the bane of my existence.
How hard was it to take a clear picture back then versus now? Or taking a picture just period. It still exists.
Yeah. Anybody that's looked at the internet will see that there's some random blurry photo of some rock out there, and somebody's been like, I think I found jade, and it's just like a random green river rock.
Yeah.
With poor lighting. It's wet. They're using a flash. It's reflecting back.
Never learned. That guy's probably like, I tried to tell him in 1976 and 2022, and they're still doing it.
Nobody learns. In the Frantic Fumbler column, he discussed the difficulties of working with some materials, and that it can kind of feel like a battle at times. He's very frustrated. It was just kind of him more, I guess, rambling about the frustrations of working with things, time and that, which there wasn't a whole lot of meat and potatoes to that column. It wasn't into it. He was having a bad month.
Although at the end there was I don't know if it was a joke or not, but he was like, send me your weird uses for your rock lapidary equipment. He was like, oh, I use my tumbler to marinate meat because you can put a pickle jar, it fits in it, and I marinate my meat using my rock tumbler. Send me your crazy, wacky ideas. And so as a contest, they're like, send it before January 16th and we'll print it in the April issue. I was like, is that a joke? Or, I hope we have the April issue.
Well, hey, if anybody's out there, if you want to try marinating in your rock tumbler,
I guess. Yeah, sure. I don't know if a jar would fit on it. Seems pretty, needs a specific shape.
I think, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe you just lucked out and you had the perfect shaped jar.
I thought it was interesting that they're like, you have to send it mid-January to print in the April issue, that they're like 4 months. I mean, maybe this February, he was writing that column in November and it was like getting closer to Christmas and he was like, I can't do these projects. And that's why it's like, I don't know.
In the shop talk column, you referred to something that he called the L-shaped grabber. And I thought this was kind of interesting. So I think calling it a grabber is a little misleading, but he was talking about the issues with clamping small things like in your rock saw to cut them. So like imagine you have a little 1.5-inch round rock. And you want to clamp this thing in your big slab saw because that's the only saw that you have. How are you going to do that? That's going to be like impossible, basically. It's not going to fit in your clamp and all of that. So imagine you take a board, right? And you cut some different sizes off of that board and you can make some L shapes, right? By affixing it. So a capital L. You have a couple of those and you have a square, and it gets progressively smaller as you make smaller L's nesting in it. I don't really see the point in doing that because basically what he's talking about doing is making a mold that you could put your rocks into and cast plaster. And his like L shape just makes it for a smaller and smaller void. But the concept is
for cutting it?
Yes. So the concept is that you can make a square out of plaster with your tiny rocks embedded in the plaster and then send it through your slab saw. And his L-shaped grabber is basically a progressively shrinking down square mold. Now this is a thing that I know people have cast rocks in plaster to cut them in their saws. During the 2021 Spokane Rock Rollers tailgate sale, somebody had some concrete sonotubes with concrete, and they put carnelian in them, and they were selling these, and so that you could cut them and get slices off of your carnelian. That's kind of weird and whatever. And I got one of those and I tried it out, and yeah, it does work, but it also put a lot of like concrete grit and stuff like aggregate into my saw, which I didn't care for, so I ended up just I have a trim saw, so I can just cut them by hand. But I thought that was kind of interesting. You really don't hear about people taking their little rocks and embedding them in plaster for cutting purposes.
Plaster work better than concrete?
Probably. It probably would. So I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of like something you just don't see or hear about anymore.
That was it for the columns, wasn't it?
That was. That's all for the columns.
On to the first article. They always start out with making a thing, and this one was a bicentennial pendant. I'm just making out I feel like they were they're like, oh no, a company didn't send us their product to test. Oh, we have a can lid. Let's use that and a quarter, and then a
bicentennial quarter.
Oh yes, a bicentennial quarter. They like casted the lid shape, so they got that round. And then they put the quarter in the middle and basically put it on not a chain, but like a thing, so it's a necklace.
It was very summer camp arts and crafts.
It looked like a can lid with a quarter on it. It wasn't like a quarter cast, because they're like, it's illegal to use a cast of a coin, so they use the actual coin.
Yeah.
And that seems heavy. Big.
It's very large.
Like wear a quarter around your neck. You're like so proud of America for being 200 years old.
I mean, it's nice to have a bicentennial quarter. I don't know if hanging it around your neck is the the fashion to have.
I don't know. Was there just like a lot of bicentennial celebrations where you would be like, I gotta dress up in my patriotic gear. I know. I'll make myself a quarter necklace.
Yeah, I wonder what 4th of July was like in 76. Was that like a...
Are we gonna... Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
No, well, just like as a person, like living through that, was it like barbecues and everybody's having the best time ever, best 4th of July ever?
Yeah, I wonder if we'll see after July, the second half of the year would be like no more mentions of bicentennial.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. It was the whole year.
There was an article called "A New Polishing Compound."
Yes.
And they discussed the high prices of polish and a good alternative being diatomaceous earth. And so I think a lot of people don't even know what that is. So it's diatoms, and they are a single-celled algae, and they have a silicate shell, and then they die, and their silicate shells basically like sink down to the bottom, and then
of
the water, and then eventually the water goes away, and it compresses over time, and then whatever. There's mines of this stuff, and it's actually very cool. I don't have a powerful enough microscope to be able to view them, but
yeah, because I saw it said if you look at it under a microscope, you can tell if it was lived in fresh or salt water.
Yeah, like they look really cool. Like they're just like perfect little shells. Perfect little shells. Well,
and they're really sharp.
Yes, you can put them around your plants and kill bugs, right?
Yes.
Like
bugs try to go through it and like get all cut up, I guess.
Talk about a brutal way to go there, Sarah.
They mentioned that like at an aside at the end of the article. They're mostly mostly people use it for something else that wasn't plants that I've never heard of, which I don't know, maybe diatomaceous has become more popular as an organic type of insecticide.
Yeah. But they were discussing the high prices of things like tin oxide, cerium oxide at that time, and had a funny little story about a guy figuring out that he could polish stuff with this. But basically that, just kind of like, hey, give this a shot.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever heard of anybody doing this?
No.
Are you going to try it?
I could.
Is polishing compound expensive still?
No, it's basically dirt cheap. You can get like a pound of cerium oxide for like $12.
But were they using cerium oxide?
I can't remember. They mentioned both cerium and tin oxide in there. But yeah, no, it'd be fun to maybe try, but I don't know if I really need to. But yeah, it's always interesting to kind of have like that little insight into what people were doing back then and why, because of what high prices, There was an article on Herkimer diamonds, which discussed the history of the Herkimer diamond. And most people, I think, understand that Herkimer diamonds are not actual diamonds. They are just quartz crystals. I like that. And they come from New York. Is it Herkimer County?
Oh, they're from New York?
Yeah. That's primarily where you find a Herkimer diamond. So it was kind of a technical article, and compared to a lot of other articles, but I did like they discussed a bunch of different crystal formations or crystal habits.
Yeah, it was really technical on the crystal formation, not like the actual like crystal faces and stuff, like the X and the Y and the like B side and like all these diagrams, and much more technical than I've ever heard anyone talk about crystals before.
It seemed a little too much for Rock and Gem. I mean, I know some like mineral digests and different things that really go in depth into the world of mineralogy will have more technical articles like that. But I can't imagine it was like a real popular one.
I mean, I thought it was a good article. I thought there was a good, history of it. They said those were first written about in 1842, and they're like, oh, it's still producing now, which is a testimony of the locality's wealth of specimens. And you hear now people are like, don't tell anyone about your spot because it'll go dry. And you're like, they're called diamonds, and they've known about it since 1842. Like, what could be more popular than that? Like, if anything's going to go dry, it's the spot that says diamonds. And, you still go out there today, right? People still get them?
Yeah, there are many locations that you can go and get them at. And they are cool. Like, they are kind of a, when you find good ones, even small, like, it's a perfect example of whatever habit that one happened to be, which is very cool to see. I would happily go and do that, although New York is a little far for us.
They're describing where in the rock layers the Herkimer diamonds were. They described it as a layer cake of stuff, and I know you hear Nick Zentner talking about like German chocolate cake, layer cake. And I was like, he stole that from someone. He did not make that up himself.
I don't know. The German chocolate cake?
Okay, he took layer cake and went German chocolate cake. I don't know if that's enough of a change to call it his own.
Maybe it's just the human experience to look at igneous layers and sedimentary layers and be like, yeah, cake.
Yeah, maybe.
Nick Zentner isn't the only hungry person
to look at
in history.
rocks.
Going to bat for you there, Nick.
No, it's a good metaphor.
Yeah.
But I just think it's funny because he says it all the time. People send him cakes because he says it so much. I'm just like, he didn't make that up.
Maybe I should pick a food item that I really want and bring it up all the time.
The next article I noted was about the guy making his super complex and patriotic quartz displays.
Jerry Munchna.
Yes.
In the article is the many facets of history.
He's certainly made a lot of facets on his little figurine. So he takes quartz and he facets it, like freeform faceting,
So we should probably explain what faceting is in case anybody doesn't know. Faceting is generally looked at as the process of taking a clear, translucent, whatever stone and cutting faces onto it. Like imagine for a diamond ring. That's the process of faceting.
Like the rough from to the thing in the ring.
Yeah, with facets that reflect light, and it's its own kind of whole hobby, and it's not something I know a whole lot about, but it is very there's recipes that people follow to produce stones, right? So you follow the recipe on your machine and it produces a stone. Freeform faceting is just kind of having the idea and winging it. And Jerry's winging it is probably some of the most impressive faceting I've ever seen.
Yeah, he made little people. He made a little tiny cannonball and a cannon. They said some of his stuff, he made the Statue of Liberty, and it had 1,040 facets on it and took him 164 hours.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Up on the website under this episode, there will be photos of it. So if you want to go check it out, it's currently rockhounding.com/podcast, episode 5.
I liked, obviously the guy is very, very good at faceting, and when he gets an idea, he goes 100% because that statue, or 1,000%, is the Statue of Liberty. He made the weight out to be exactly an important number. It was okay, it's 1976 carats for the year, and then a half carat because 4th of July is halfway through the year. Like, not only is he making this really complex Statue of Liberty out of quartz, and he's also like, okay, he needs to weigh this exact amount. I'm like, that's a lot. Seems like very complex work.
I have a lot of respect for people that do faceting because it's very meticulous and like such an attention to detail in all of it. Like, you are actually producing something that is perfect, which is very cool. And it's even more impressive when you see somebody that's like a master faceter making a 7¼ inch tall Statue of Liberty with that many facets, that many hours, like getting it down to the right weight. I mean, it's a shame he didn't like mount it on a giant ring.
And then break it.
But it was very, very cool to see. I was, usually when I see the stuff that people work on, I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but I'm never like, wow, that is impressive. And this is kind of wow impressive.
It was. I did like how they're like this like deeply patriotic guy who's super excited about bicentennial and he loves America. Sometimes he's not happy with what he sees, but he still stands up for it. And then like he makes these like super patriotic scenes from quartz imported from Brazil. Like, do we not have quartz in America that's high quality enough?
We do.
Why? What? It's too expensive for him? Like, I mean, they like painted this. There's like this 3 paragraphs about how much this guy loves America and deep patriot, and then there's like, yep, Brazilian quartz.
Maybe there's something we don't know.
Yeah,
is it less likely to fracture?
Yeah,
like, does it have like a higher tenacity or something than other forms of?
Yeah, or maybe just like that's what he's used to working with, and he knows it the best, and he knows like the limits of it, and.
Yeah, why didn't he make it out of some homegrown quartz?
Yeah, if you're going to do like this whole patriotic display about how America.
Yeah. There was an article about birthstones, amethyst, and it basically seemed like a filler article.
Yeah, it was.
It really lacked any kind of real substance. Basically,
they had an article on amethyst before too, and it was like some of the same stuff about the goblets that you drink wine out of, and it was not. I mean, they haven't had any other birthstone articles. So I'm like, why start now?
Filler. That was filler article.
They do take up a lot of space every issue with the show dates that they publish. And I looked through them, and I did see that they had the Spokane show. It was the 17th annual Greater Spokane Gem and Mineral Fair at the fairgrounds. So their first one was in 1959.
I didn't know that.
That is a show we've been to, so I noted that. I didn't know they've been doing shows since. I wonder if they've been doing continuous shows or.
Well, there's been at least a couple of breaks in there, I think, where they missed some, but yeah.
I don't know if we went to the show in 2019, but they should have been like, 60-year show?
Yeah.
But yeah, those take up a lot of space too. They could just make the print a little bigger and they don't have to do filler articles about amethyst.
Yeah.
What was the next one you noted? I felt there was a lot of them where I was like, those are a little odd or
boring. So there was an article, I can't even pronounce it.
I assume like, Philly Lou?
Yeah, is that Philly Lou?
It's not real. I looked it up. There's no... The person made it up.
Yeah.
So pronounce it however you want.
Which discusses the splitting of mica books to get sheets of mica and then painting on them. So like doing a painting on these mica sheets. I thought one thing that I thought was interesting about this kind of weird art thing was one of the colors that he used. He called it hooker green because hookers hookers wear green. Just so you know that.
I didn't know that.
What, the prostitutes all wear green?
Yeah, is that true?
I have no idea. Apparently, this guy is speaking from experience.
Huh. Yeah, it was like was making the Phililu, which was like an imaginary thing, and they're like, nobody knows what it looks like, so it looks like whatever you want it. And they made like a painting, and it looked like a bird, kind of.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
And they tried to sell it at like a art show or a craft show, and some kid was like, oh, I want that. And then he told the artist or the writer told him how much it was, and the dad was like, no, too expensive. Like, that's a weird detail to put in there? Sure.
High-class art.
You should have told the dad, been like, oh, you don't like the hooker green?
I mean,
it's perfect for your little son's room.
Yeah. He needed hooker money for later. He needed to sell his artwork. There's a very little article about storing small stuff. And another kind of filler article, using your 35 millimeter plastic film cans screwed to a board.
Yeah.
And that's not something you would see nowadays.
No.
You don't see any 35 millimeter film canisters floating around.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was a whole article about that.
Yeah.
So.
There was also, I feel like the middle was kind of filler, and then towards the end it got better.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also Gifts from Your Tumblr by Dixie Douglas. And it was really long.
It was really long.
I didn't read the whole thing because it was just like tumble a rock and then give it try to make it into a thing and give it to somebody.
One thing that I thought was really interesting. So in the front of the beginning of the article, there's like a full page color image of GIFs. Mm-hmm. And the image used for all the GIFs has "for Grandpa" written on one of them. And the R and the N are backwards. So I guess it's like indicate that like a kid, like you have a kid that's like
old enough to tumble rocks.
Old enough to tumble rocks, and giving a gift to their grandpa, but they don't understand that the R and N are facing the wrong direction when they write grandpa.
Definitely a kid wrote that, for sure.
But yeah, it's pretty much to explain the basics of, like making something with your tumbled stones. Yeah. So, like tumble them and like glue the thing to it so that you can have a bolo tie, like glue it to make a bracelet and you put it on a bracelet, and just like some different uses for them. That was basically it.
Yeah. It's hard that seems like a poor article choice, because then right after it, the article is called like Originality, where they talk about the guy who makes crazy jewelry that's super creative and great and amazing, and hard to follow up, precede that article with like, I tumbled it and then I glued it to a thing.
I tried to dox Dixie Douglas. I tried searching her. I scoured all of the internet, and I found nothing.
Well, we know she had a rock shop in Idaho.
I was not able to find anything about her. So maybe as we continue down this journey of reading these, we'll learn more about Dixie Douglas.
Yeah. What did you think about the Originality article? The guy with the giant jewelry and super creative.
So the article, Originality, just cover yourself with jewels. It's kind of a profile of Del Taylor, who looks like, I can't even pronounce this. Whatever. It's the title for a great ruler. That's kind of like what his like shtick or whatever was, whatever you want to call it. Like, like he wanted to like look like Indian royalty, and made some very large and elaborate jewelry.
But he also just had a lot of jewelry. Like the author, I think, goes to his house or something, and the guy like has like a literal like a chest, like a treasure chest full of jewelry, and they're like, "This is crazy." But also he would make pieces for people.
I mean, it's like some Mr. T level, like jewelry, like to give you an idea. So like but we're talking about like a white guy in Salt Lake City in 1976, trying to look like royalty, which is like kind of a little odd. I thought, like, you're trying to like pretend like you're a king walking around Salt Lake City, but everything that he made was clearly very skillfully done, even by like today's standards. I'd say like that it was very, very high quality stuff, although it looked a little odd.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciated that it seemed like he really thought about jewelry and what it looks like and what it not means, but like actually, like, I think there was a quote and it was like, jewelry announces who you are, what you think you are, or what you want to be. And like that, and that's a sentiment I don't think considered in a tumbled rock to a chain and wear it around your neck. Like, like, I don't know. I just appreciated his
doing that. Just sends the message that you read a Dixie Douglas article.
I appreciated his deeper thinking about jewelry and not just like, I have a rock, I could make a cab and then stick it in a bolo tie. Like, he did more stuff. But also then he like, a later quote was like, a birthstone jewelry says, look, I was born. Is that a statement you need to make with your jewelry? Like, I was born? Like, oh, I didn't know you were born. Glad you're wearing a birthstone jewelry.
I'm gonna if I ever notice somebody wearing a birthstone jewelry, I'm gonna be like, wow,
you were born.
You were born
during a month. Like,
before during a month. Okay. Are we ready for the wonderful miniatures of Walker Valley?
What's next?
Well, Walker Valley is a rockhounding location here in Washington State, and the article discussed some of the tiny finds from there.
They weren't that tiny because the photos said real life size, so they're probably like inch and a half.
When I think of tiny, I think of like, I need a microscope.
Yeah.
I don't need like.
That's what I would have expected.
Yeah, but I guess when you go back in time some, and when everybody's pulling big stuff or whatever, even by, like, I would say.
Yeah, I guess it is.
If you have a specimen nowadays and it's like an inch or two across, most people look at that as being pretty small.
Yeah.
It's definitely not like a big cabinet piece, like, museum thing. But
I guess I just had different expectations by the word miniatures.
Yeah, I think like micro mounting, but
But it wasn't. That's okay.
Yeah. So Walker Valley, it's a hard rock mining location, and you can find amethyst, calcite, and
geodes,
amethyst line geodes. Yeah. But yeah, it's a cool spot. It's still active today. People still head up to Walker Valley. And in the article, there's a little map on where to go.
It's a pretty good map. I was surprised.
Better than many of the maps in modern rockhounding books.
That's why I was surprised. I was like, oh, the modern rockhounding books, it's just because the information's a little older. That's why it's a hand-drawn map with weird symbols that don't make any sense. But no.
It's stupidity.
This was like a real map.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. I don't know. I was hoping you would have looked it up. That they were like, "Oh, some of these minerals we haven't even identified them yet, but here they are in the picture."
I didn't.
Oh, there was one that said it was like a pipe-like mineral, and it said it was common, but they hadn't identified it yet. I thought it was interesting that.
I think we've identified everything.
I assume we've identified it by now, but I just wondered what it was that.
It's probably most likely calcite. Calcite has so many different habits. It's probably one of the more visually confusing of the minerals that people typically pick up, and they're like, "What the heck is this?" Because it can come in so many different habits, have all these different shades to it. Obviously, when you start throwing in acid and it's melting, it gets a little easier, but calcite can take on a lot of different forms, and I think they were just confused as to what they were, or not confused, they hadn't identified it yet.
I was just surprised. I'm like, shouldn't you, if you're writing an article for Rock and Gem magazine, you don't have like the connections to be like, what is this? Somebody tell me what this is.
Facebook, blurry, dark, wet, bright photo that as you're shaking your 35 millimeter camera, and you ran out of flash bulbs.
Like make some calls, describe it. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was so funny that it was like, you didn't have any other ones? Like, I don't know. I just thought they would have identified what it is. Like, if it's common, they weren't like, first one we've ever found there. That was it for the articles of like field trips, and there wasn't really any field trip type articles like they had before. I felt like they were a little, talking about the little miniatures of Walker Valley. It wasn't like, oh, go on a trip to Walker Valley, talk to someone here, stay here, camp here. There was no like guides.
Well, there's the crystals at Simcoe.
Oh yeah, I didn't read that one as much.
We have 2 articles left to go. Fader fire agates, which discussed why fire agates lose their fire.
They didn't discuss,
What?
They didn't they were like, I don't know why.
Well,
it just discussed that it happens.
Yeah, it was almost like written in this way to like raise awareness, like a PSA about fire agates losing their fire.
Yeah, well, do you want to talk about the article, or was that? That was it. That was the whole article. They're like, sometimes I get it, and 2 days later the fire's gone. I don't know how to get it back, and I've tried to put it in water and put it in this and this and this, and nothing works, and I don't know why, but sometimes it just happens. And I accidentally sent some out to some customers, and they were upset because by the time they got it, the fire was gone, and I had to send them new stuff, and I felt bad. And then the next page, this article was written by Warren Hughes. The next page from the article was an ad for fire agates from Hughes Fire Agates, and it said 100% satisfaction guaranteed. So was this was the article just to be like my musings on the loss of the fire in a fire agate, or was it a?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about fire agates. Fire agates come from Arizona, and pretty much people like grind down to the right above the fire layer, and it's like a kind of botryoidal, bubbly agate that's got lots of reds and looks really cool. I tried to find anything about fire agates magically just losing their fire appearance, and I couldn't really find anything. There is the potential for oxidization to be happening on the fire agate, or perhaps something that he was using as a means to polish, oxidizing over time. But I don't think this isn't generally a problem that people have, but it was like loosely an article that maybe you were reading it and then you're like, oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know. Or you're like, I've been looking for a place. This guy seems legit. He knows his fire agates. Oh, he sells them. How convenient.
Yeah. There was one final article, and that's the crystals at Simcoe. And you didn't read it.
It's in New York, right?
No.
I'm confusing them.
Okay, the crystals at Simcoe, a Southern California. Yeah, so it's a Southern California location for quartz crystals, and feldspar, but they're dipyramids. And a dipyramid is, it's like, imagine 2 pyramids and they're like placed base to base, and that's a dipyramid.
So they're really little and stubby.
Yeah, they're very little, stubby, kind of just,
yeah.
dipyramid. And still a location today. You can still go out there today and find dipyramids. Pretty much you get on your hands and knees and you crawl around on the desert floor, looking for these little guys. They're a little similar to the Herkimer diamonds in that they're, people call them pyramid diamonds, but they are not. They're quartz crystals. So I thought that was kind of interesting that it's like the quartz crystal thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Did they need 2 articles about quartz crystals in one magazine?
Crystals. Oh. Can you have too many quartz crystals?
I just found it underwhelming.
It was well, I think so. As I've gotten into small minerals like micromounting, I do think that there's stories to be told, and there's ways to show and talk about tiny rocks and minerals in a way that is interesting, and they just didn't do it. They didn't do it. So, well, I think that concludes this episode of the previously Rockhounding podcast. In the next episode, we're going to be looking at Rock and Gem magazine from March 1976, a dream workshop from Found Things, King of Tourmaline, a rockhound's guide to Baja California. Hint, hint, we got the book. How-tos, field trips, rock crystal, beach agates, and Brazil.
I don't know, what did this say? A dream workshop from Found Things. That's one article. I thought an article was just like, from Found Things. I was like, that sounds like it could be bad.
I hope that's going to be, I think that's going to be really good.
Yeah, that sounds...
a lot of people have shops and you see the end result of an awesome shop, and it'd be cool if there's something about,
We do have crystals on the cover, so I guess crystals are just sure hit. Put them on the cover, write an article. Everybody loves crystals.
Everybody does love crystals. Thanks for listening, everybody. Catch you on the next episode.